Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. Here on the magnificent Monday edition of the Yard. Man, it feels so good to be alive. It does. Things are great, man. Recruiting's going well. Dead period's underway. Probably have a chance for all of us to kind of take a breath, go to the beach maybe. Maybe head down to the Redneck Riviera, down at Orange Beach, go by Floribama. Right? Maybe you can do that. Maybe you can go to the river. And a lot of you enjoy doing that. Go lay by the pool, get out and have a little fun. Maybe go to Disney. I don't know. Do whatever it is you do when you're not here. And have a good time. But as the emails come pouring in. But my point being is that there should be a bit of a lull in sports information here in the next few weeks. So we're going to work hard here at the Boneyard and try to fill that void. As you guys know, the final game of the college baseball season will take place tonight. We're not playing. We'll talk about that later in the show briefly. But it's going to be a lot of football today. A lot of football talk. And if you hadn't done so, you need to be thinking about what your plans are for September. I mean, guys, it is almost July. Let that sink in for a second. It feels like the kids just got out of school. And maybe for some of you, it's like they've been out too long already, Steve. Maybe it is. But Labor Day weekend will be here soon. SEC Media Days coming up. Fall camps coming up. I mean, think about this. By the time you take a vacation, you come back, you get settled, kind of get over that sunburn, make some of that money that you spent too much of when you're down there. We're going to be in fall camp. We're going to be talking about football. We're going to be interviewing Zach Arnett, your players, about their preparations for the 2023 season. It's not going to be long. It's not. We'll get done with the College World Series. We'll have a little bit of time to take our breath. Next thing you know, it's nose to the grindstone. And as a guy that likes a schedule, I enjoy football season being here. We typically get, Arnett on Mondays. Offensive players and coaches Tuesday, defensive players and coaches Wednesday. We don't have a deal Thursday. Friday's a game preview, and we travel or not, and it's a ball game. And Sunday, so it's a nice regimented schedule for us. And you guys kind of get to learn about your team and other teams. And I'm happy to say, too, was informed this morning by the fine folks at 247 Sports, thegenespage.com, the most dominant maroon media entity of all time, has reached an all-time high in subscribers. How about that? So thank you to all of you who subscribe. Those of you that don't, you should. You should. We'd love to have you as part of our wonderful community as we give you unprecedented coverage of Mississippi State athletics. It is something that we take very, very, very seriously. You got a few days left to take advantage of our 50% off special. 50% off an annual subscription through the month of June. And, of course, think about that for a second. You go ahead and pay that 50% off. That gets you through football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and next year's baseball season. So you sign up today. That's going to get you all the way to Omaha. It's a great deal. Great deal. And, again, Dad, I promise you that the 50% off annual VIP membership at genespage.com is better than that pack of socks that they bought you at Walmart out of obligation for Father's Day. So treat yourself, Dad, Mom, whoever you may be, to 50% off. Gene's Page during the month of June. And again, that's an annual sub. It'll take you all the way to next June. We look forward to having you come join us. Absolutely incredible. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I'm thinking about heading down there today. I had some people hit me up and said, hey, Steve, I went and tried the Mississippi Barbecue Burger. You're absolutely right. You're right. Maybe we should print T-shirts. Rose Bowl was right. Maybe we should do that. But Bulldog Burger Company, man, doing a great job. And here's the thing, too. I get these phases in life where I find what works with me, and I just continue to do it. So pretty soon, maybe I'll move off of the Mississippi Barbecue Burger, move on to something else. The one consistent with me is when I go and dine with 2 or more people, we're getting the spring rolls as our appetizer. And a lot of times it's not even for my benefit. It's for theirs. Because you know that spring rolls make you better looking. I'm trying to make the world more beautiful one spring roll at a time. And so when you sit down and maybe you've got a friend that doesn't look their best, and maybe you don't want to say anything. So you know what? Hey, we're going to have the spring roll as our appetizer. It's a very nice, discreet way of helping your friend look their best. It's in writing. Trust the science. Trust me on this. I didn't get to be this beautiful due to genetics. The spring rolls play a big part. It's true. 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Star Vegas. Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. And be mindful, we'll have some tap takeovers here in the weeks to come. And occasionally a little live music out there at Tupelo. How cool is that, man? Get a nice meal, an adult beverage, and kick back and listen to some live music. Nice little ambiance there. It's great. Get the chocolate shake to go. Or maybe get that bread pudding, put it in the fridge. You get up in the middle of the night. Man, just need a palate cleanser. Go ahead and knock that bad boy out. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, let's talk some college football today. So I dug up all the over-unders. You know, these people in Vegas, the reason the casinos are as big as they are is because they know how to get your money. It's not just, hey, let's build a nice, pretty building so people will come visit us. No, we're building it on their money. They make an investment, build these great casinos, and have Cirque du Soleil and all that stuff. And the Motley Crue or Alice Cooper does a Vegas residency, and you go out there, and while you're there, you go gamble a little bit. Now I gamble on occasion too. Maybe some of you are like regular gamblers. I'm not. I go occasionally, and I go take a couple $100 of their money on a blackjack table, and I'm good for a while. It's really more of an entertainment thing for me. I'm not trying to go out there and get rich. But nevertheless, Vegas, they set these odds to get betting on both sides of the line. That's what they do. They want action on both sides. When everybody says, oh, this is a joke, they're going to win more than this, or they're going to win less than this, so you throw some money at it, and then they take, they're going to win either way, right? Because half the people are going to lose a bet at least. But they set the over-unders. And so I want to go through that today and tell you how realistic I think it is. And again, remember, this is not necessarily a prediction per se. It's a way to generate betting action. All right, we'll go alphabetically here. Alabama. Vegas has set the over-under on those guys at 10.5. Brand new quarterback. But how many times have people kind of prematurely predicted the demise of the Alabama run? Now, of course, last year wasn't the year they wanted it to be. It was still a pretty good year, though. But 10.5 wins this year. How doable is that? Well, you play 12 regular season games. You say, well, if they lose 2, that's good money for me, right? Because if I bet the under on 10.5, got a good chance to make some scratch there. All right, so the title opens with Middle Tennessee State. They get Texas. So you got to feel like, hey, I got Middle Tennessee. I get Texas and Bryant-Denny. It'll be Sark versus Saban. I got to go with Saban there. But if I'm Texas, I'm happy about getting Alabama early. I'm not happy about playing them there. And then Alabama will go to Raymond James Stadium in Tampa to take care of the South Florida Bulls. Then Ole Miss comes in to Bryant-Denny. So it won't be a 7-0 start for Ole Miss this year. And then Alabama comes to us. Then they travel to College Station, Texas. And you got to wonder, okay, is that a bit of a trap game? I don't think so. I don't think Alabama gets trapped. Then they host Arkansas. Then they host Tennessee. Remember what happened last year? Tennessee finally got off the schneid there with them and finally got a win in that, quote, rivalry. They get a week off to prepare for LSU, who beat them a year ago down in Tiger Stadium. They travel to Lexington. They get the Mocs of UT Chat and then Auburn. So I ask you at this point, when you begin to think about the math, you say, hey, 2 losses, I'm in the money. Where do they come from? Where are the 2 losses? It's going to require somebody to upset them. And I think their road games are all very manageable. Very manageable. And again, you look at this deal, like LSU and Tennessee both beat Alabama in the regular season last year. You get both of those games at Bryant-Denny Stadium. You got to feel good about that. Of course, Alabama had some struggles down there at College Station. Bobby Petrino and those guys will be thinking, hey, we got a chance to pull an upset here. I just don't think Alabama's going to lose 2. They may slip up and get 1. I just don't, unless they have a major injury, I just don't see it. And we don't even really know who the quarterback's going to be. You talk about a testament to the power of Alabama football. That's it right there. that we don't even have a definitive winner of the quarterback position, and the odds makers in Vegas are expecting them to win double-digit games. But again, I think there's a lot of parity in the league this year. I don't think that there are a lot of great teams. Like last year, we said, hey, there's a couple of great teams, and it's kind of everybody else. It looks that way this year on paper, because even though LSU won the West last year, would you say LSU was a great team? They were a really, really good team, but I wouldn't say they were great. Remember, they got beat at College Station at the end of the year, and of course Georgia got them. You know, it's just part of the deal. But I wouldn't have said they were a great team. They had a great game against Alabama. Wasn't a great team, though. You said, but Steve, they won the West. They did. They did. But that's a team that Mississippi State should have beaten in Tiger Stadium. All right, let's take a look at Auburn. It's tough to figure out what to make of Auburn, right? I mean, honestly, they were not good last year. They are somewhat talent deficient. Of course, Hugh Freeze is there now. You know, offensively, they should be better. They've had some transfer quarterbacks come in, competition at the position. You know, people are like, Robbie Ashford's a different player in this scheme, and I suspect he is. They're not relying on him to throw the football an awful lot. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at the quarterback position. Vegas has them at 6.5 in the over-under. 6.5. I think betting on Auburn to beat that is probably the smart play. Not that I'm going to, but I'm just telling you, I think they win 7 or so. They open up with UMass. That's a W. They go to California. Now, here's the thing I'll tell you about that. I don't know how good California is going to be this year. Maybe you do. Maybe you are a close follower of Golden Bear football. But this is a team last year that didn't play very well at all. 4-8 last year? And I think they lost 6 of the last 7. They get Stanford, the Stanford-Cal game. But most of the games were competitive. But if you're Auburn, you got to think, man, this is a chance for me to really build some trust within our team. However, you got to go all the way across the country and play this game. And we know from experience, sometimes there's a bit of a hangover there. But that's a toss-up game. It really is. Because, again, Cal wasn't good last year. Auburn wasn't either. Your toss-up games tend to favor the home team. So it'll be interesting to see. Then you get Samford. That's a dub. Auburn could be 3-0. Is that really out of the realm of possibility? I think it's 3-0 headed to College Station. Interesting. Then you get Georgia. Okay, that's a loss. You got to go to Tiger Stadium after a bye week, so I'm sure they'll have a few wrinkles in, but I see it's a loss. They host Ole Miss. Again, that's a toss-up. Then they host us. And then at Vanderbilt, at Arkansas, New Mexico State, Alabama. So you start running the numbers here, and you start thinking, okay, what are the obvious wins? Okay, UMass, Samford, for sure. Vanderbilt, New Mexico State. You're almost there. You're almost there. And you think that they won a couple toss-ups. And so, yeah, I think in year one, they're probably a 7-5 type team. But when you begin to look at, the fact that most of the toss-ups are at home, you can see there's room for optimism. I don't think Auburn challenges for the West. I do think Auburn's probably a solid bowl team, and that's a big step forward. Maybe they're 6-6. Maybe they are. I mean, Vegas knows what they're doing. But they're a bowl team. You're just looking at this schedule, without considering any potential injuries, it's a decent schedule. And, of course, any schedule that has Alabama and Georgia on it, it's not a favorable schedule. And then, of course, you throw in LSU, top 10 LSU. But I think the swing games for them, obviously, the road game to A&M, and then the home dates against State and Ole Miss. Be awfully interesting. I think Auburn might actually go to Fayetteville and win that game, too. We'll see how things go. Speaking of Fayetteville and the Arkansas Razorbacks, let's take a look at their schedule. Also, over-under 6.5. And you'll find there's a lot of those, too. A lot of parity in the league this year, which makes these toss-up games all the more important. Another reason why it's a good year for us to have 8 home games. All right, Arkansas is going to open up with Western Carolina, and then Kent State, and then BYU. Shouldn't they win all 3 of those games? I suspect they should. Then they go to Tiger Stadium. That BYU game, too, is a bit of a toss-up, too. Then they go to Tiger Stadium. That's a loss. They'll play in Arlington against A&M. Man, that's a tough one. Always is. Then they got to go to Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. They go to Alabama. They host Mississippi State, and they get a bye week. And that's the thing I think about, too, the way the schedule lays out for us. Think about this, kind of leading into the Mississippi State game. At LSU, neutral site game with A&M. Then you're at Vaught-Hemingway, and then at Alabama. Then we go to Fayetteville. So it'll be their first home game in over a month. They'll be happy to be home. But what kind of shape physically they're going to be in at that point? That's a pretty defining moment in the Arkansas schedule. You get a bye week, then you go to Florida, then you got Auburn, FIU, and Missouri. You know, I know there's some Arkansas people that are optimistic. But I look at this and I begin to ask myself, after those first 3 ball games, where do you see a sure win outside of Florida International? You can say, well, there's Missouri. Yeah, they thought that last year. And your good friend and host told you for a month Missouri was going to beat Arkansas, and they did. Again, I'm a conspiracy theorist. But I look at the schedule with Arkansas, and I wouldn't bet money on this to save my life. Because where are the wins coming from? I mean, this could be a 5-7 team. They could be. They could also be a 7-5 team. A lot of questions about this team. Not to mention the fact that you've got brand new coordinators. KJ's coming back. I love KJ. I do. But you've also had Trey Knox move on. You know, of course, you should have one of the better running games in the conference. But you were so bad defensively last year, you had to get away from it. So if you can improve the defensive play, maybe you can stick with the game plan. But that's what happened last year, is that teams would get separation. You'd have to kind of abandon the plan. But Arkansas, I think it's going to be a tough year. I really do. I think it's one of those years, too. I think fans will begin to ask themselves, can we get it done under Sam Pittman? And I like Sam. I do. I really, really do. I think that he's a guy that would fit well at Mississippi State as an assistant. Not as a head coach, but as an assistant. And I think he fits Arkansas pretty well, too. But I think maybe they overshot a little bit, expecting him to be a head coach. And again, I want him to do well because I like him. I think the kids play hard for him. But I think when you look at all the changes this year within that program, there's a lot riding on the shoulders of KJ Jefferson. And if he gets injured again, it could be a year that goes in the tank for sure. All right, let's talk about Florida. When's the last time you saw Florida with an over and under of 5.5? They're projected to be a losing team this year. Doesn't speak well for Billy Napier. That's the thing you begin to think about if you're Scott Strickland. I mean, you went out and hired Billy Napier, and like me, I thought, hey, he was a good coach to follow Dan Mullen because there's so many of the same elements offensively that Billy runs that Dan ran. A lot of it's the same. A lot of the same concepts. So it made sense that he would be able to take the existing talents, formulate a good offensive scheme, and move forward. And they didn't do it. They had a bad year. Could be another bad year, too. And people say, well, Dan Mullen's recruiting woes are coming home. You know what? That's probably true. But you know what? There's a reason we have a transfer portal. And Florida's out there, quote, killing it on the recruiting trail. And I think when you look a little bit deeper into the film, you begin to realize they got some kids that are ranked really high, but I don't know if they're difference makers in the Southeastern Conference. All right, so they're going to open up at Utah. Would you pick Florida over Utah right now in Salt Lake City? I wouldn't. Utah's one of the top 15 teams in the country. They're going to challenge for the Pac-12 championship game. That's a loss. Then McNeese State goes to the Swamp. Should be a dub. Tennessee then goes in. Even though that's in the Swamp, I think you got to take Tennessee. Then Charlotte comes in. That should be a dub. So you should be 2-2 headed to Lexington. I'm not a big Kentucky fan. I won't be the least bit surprised if Florida wins that game. I see it as a toss-up, even though it's on the road. Then you get Vanderbilt. Then you got to go to South Carolina. And so you look at the first half of the schedule and say, you know what? Yeah, there's a couple of games that I'm not real certain about, but it's not inconceivable to think they could be 4-2 or 3-3 at the break. And then it sets up pretty poorly. Then you get the bye week. Then you got Georgia. Arkansas comes in. That could be a dub. Then you got to go to LSU. Then you're at Missouri again. And then you get Florida State. This could be one of those deals where you have a decent first half and a dreadful second half. I certainly see Florida as a team that's going to have to really, really work hard to be bowl eligible. And again, it's going to boil down to how these toss-up games turn out. But Florida, the Billy Napier era, not off to a good start, and you got to think, surely they won't fire him already. I don't know. What do the Bull Gators say, Scott? Be tough. I mean, 2 years is not enough time, but they're impatient over there for sure. Then you see Georgia winning national championships and Tennessee kind of rising to prominence again. You begin to think maybe you're missing your window. You need some new blood in the program. You hate to say it. Billy Napier may be on the hot seat this year. Georgia. Over-under for Georgia is 11.5. So either they're going to win 11 and you lose, or they're going to win 12 and you win. They got to go undefeated for you to take the over and be a winner. I think this schedule, again, they got to figure out the quarterback thing. This schedule, for the most part, is a dream. An absolute dream of a schedule. UT Martin, dub. Ball State, dub. South Carolina in Georgia, dub. UAB, dub. At Auburn, dub. Kentucky in Athens, dub. At Vanderbilt, dub. Florida on a neutral site, that's a dub. Missouri in Athens, dub. Ole Miss in Athens, dub. You go to Tennessee, that's the one that gives you a little pause right there, right? So you know what? Could Tennessee get them? Maybe. I don't think so, but they could. And then you got to go to Georgia Tech. That's a dub. And so you look at this game and you say, you know what? They should be expected to win every one of these games. And the one that gives you pause is at Tennessee. And you never know what Tennessee's going to have, right? Hendon Hooker's gone. Of course, Joe Milton's there, and he can throw it a mile. But this is a near perfect schedule for Georgia. You avoid Alabama. You avoid LSU. I mean, there's 4 teams in the SEC that are expected to win 9 or more games this year. And the only one of them you play is Tennessee. How about that? Dream of a schedule for Georgia. So, yeah, do they repeat as national champions? I don't know if I go that far. But should they have a great season? You better believe it. All right, Kentucky. Mike Nemeth says, I love to hate on Kentucky. I just think I tell the truth about Kentucky. They've had a favorable schedule year after year after year. And they'll get off to a great start again this year. They will. And they're smart to schedule wins. Kind of the Scott Strickland scheduling format. We got to win all 4 non-conference games, and Kentucky should. I imagine their strength of schedule is probably somewhere about 500. Open up with Ball State, then Eastern Kentucky, and then the Akron Zips. Joe, we're counting on you. I know you had some tough nights in Lexington. We're counting on you. And then they go to Vanderbilt. There's no reason to think Kentucky shouldn't be 4-0. Now, Clark Lee and Vanderbilt defensively are going to be better. This is one of those games I'm sure Vanderbilt fans looking at and say, you know what? We might be able to get those guys. But let's give Kentucky the benefit of the doubt here, like everybody in the SEC media seems to do. They're 4-0. Then they host Florida. They conceivably could be 5-0. You travel to Georgia, that's a loss. Then you host Missouri, maybe a toss-up. Bye week, then it's Tennessee at Davis-Wade Stadium, where you have struggled mightily. Then it's Alabama. Congratulations, Mark. You finally get to play Alabama again. You're at South Carolina at Louisville. And so the over-under for Kentucky is 6.5. And like Arkansas, I think it's well placed because this could be a team that could win 7. It could be a team that would win 5. But when you look at this joke of a non-conference schedule, I can't imagine, outside of Louisville, I mean, none of these games should be competitive. And so you think, okay, we win those 3, we're halfway there, and we get the benefit of playing Vanderbilt, Missouri, and South Carolina. We ought to get bowl eligible. Should. But as bad as we play when we go to Kentucky, they play equally as bad when they come here. So I expect us to win that game. All right, LSU's over-under is 9.5. I don't know what you think about LSU. I don't know what you think about Brian Kelly. I know that he did the little accent thing that turned some people off, and that's all cool too, whatever. But the guy put together a pretty good season last year. Again, not a great team, but a lot of people, when LSU kind of stumbled out of the gate, people are like, man, what's happening? They rallied back and beat Alabama, won the West, played in Atlanta. We needed them to get in the New Year's Six game. They did. That's okay. But looking at 2023 schedule, and it's kind of like last year. It sets up a lot like last year. You know, they played Florida State last year in the Superdome. This year, they're going to play Florida State again in Orlando. Florida State won the game last year. I like them to win it again this year. Of course, Jaden Daniels could be a difference maker in that game. Then you get Grambling, and then you got to travel to Davis-Wade Stadium. It's going to be interesting. What did we learn last year? That's the game, I think. Last year we had so many times where a mobile quarterback, when things broke down, gave us trouble. What have we learned defensively based on how teams attacked us last year when the coverage was good, the protection kind of broke down, and guys were able to kind of get out and play backyard football? What have we learned? That'll be a litmus test for us. Then they host Arkansas. They're at Ole Miss, at Missouri, host Auburn, host Army, at Alabama. Then they go to the Swamp, Georgia State, Texas A&M. So you look at this, over-under is 9.5. It's a reasonable chance to get there. And again, basically, is LSU the second-best team in the West this year? I think, just looking at the eye look test, I would say yeah. I don't know who else there would be. I think it's a big, after Alabama and then LSU, I think you can just kind of, throw everybody together and pull them out of the pile, and everybody will look very similar. I really do. But LSU, I like them to potentially be a New Year's Six team this year. And again, Jaden Daniels is a guy that I didn't think he'd survive a year last year because he ran so much. But he did. All right, Mississippi State, again, going alphabetically here. State's over under 6.5. And again, you first look at that and say 6.5, and then you realize that just about everybody in the conference is 6.5 or worse. I like the schedule. I've said it over and over again. All right, Southeastern, that's a dub. Arizona, in our place, that's a dub. LSU coming here, it's a toss-up, but you got to figure you favor LSU there. Let's call that a loss. Go to South Carolina. That's the game that I think, again, there's a difference between a good year and a great year. You got to win that game. Alabama comes here. We're going to go ahead and pencil it in as a loss, even though I think that we'll go out there and compete hard. I just don't know if we've got the talent to compete. Western Michigan comes in. That's a dub. We get a week off before we go to Fayetteville. That's a big, big off week for us because I think that's a swing game on the schedule. Really help us in the bowl pecking order. I like us to go up there and win. We should have won the last 2 times up there. We dominated the series the last decade or so. And the 2 games that we've lost up there, you look at, it took us missing 3 field goals. Right? It's crazy. Then we go to Auburn. It's always tough going to play down there. Last time we went, it took the biggest comeback in school history to win. And Kentucky comes in, and we go to College Station. We've had some success. Southern Miss. Then a short week, we turn around and play Ole Miss. And so 6.5, yeah, I'm betting on the Bulldogs. I don't bet on the Bulldogs because I'm not always objective about said Bulldogs. I like us to win 8. I think we could get 9. Things fall to us right, maybe you get even better. But I think you can win. I think 9-3 is not unrealistic. I know people are like, oh, no, we're going to be 6-6, 7-5. If we are 6-6 and 7-5 this year, and we don't have a major injury, then we have not performed or coached very well. With this favorable schedule and with so much parity in the league, it needs to be a good year for State. And people are like, oh, but Steve, we're retooling the offense. Kevin Barbay knows what he's doing. The pieces are there. You've got veteran players. It's not like you're starting fresh at a bunch of high school kids. We should beat the odds. I don't have any question about that. All right, Missouri. We don't play those guys. Missouri's one of those teams, too. They got eligible late, and you start thinking, okay, Missouri kind of left for dead, and then they end up beating Arkansas in that big ball game at the end of the year to get bowl eligible. But, they're over-under, again, is 6.5. I love this. They open up with the South Dakota Coyotes. Let's get it done, South Dakota. That should be a dub. Middle Tennessee, we'll see what Middle looks like, but Middle's going to have a lot of SEC flavor on the schedule. Then it's Kansas State, who was phenomenal last year. Went on and played the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. Kansas State's kind of got it going up there. Kind of favor the Wildcats here. Memphis, they're going to play that game in St. Louis. So good for Memphis. They're a couple thousand fans who have a good time being in the air conditioning. At Vanderbilt, then it's LSU, at Kentucky, South Carolina, at Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, at Arkansas. Not a very good schedule for Eli Drinkwitz. And a lot of people thought, hey, this guy's going to electrify things at Missouri. I think you look at the non-conference schedule and you think, okay, you're going to need all 4 of these, and you get all 4 of them to open the year. See, that in turn, you don't really get a break the rest of the way. So all 4 non-conference games come in the first 4 weeks of the season. And outside of that South Dakota game, would you look at this and say, yeah, they'll definitely win that game? Could you see Missouri winning over Memphis on a neutral field? Yeah. Could you see Memphis doing it? I mean, honestly, think about it. That's really a coin flip, and you're allowed it to be played on a neutral field. Kansas State's a loss. Middle's a toss-up. So that's the thing. You look at your 4 non-conference games, and the only sure win is South Dakota. Not good. Yes, you get the benefit of playing Vanderbilt, but you're at their place. And so I started looking at this schedule. And, again, Missouri at 6.5. I would take the under on this. I don't see 6 or 7 wins on this schedule if you're Missouri. I think Missouri, number one, they needed everything they had to get to a bowl last year. I don't think they get those breaks this year. Maybe I'm wrong. There's a reason we play the games. It's still fun to talk about. All right, next up on the list, Ole Miss Rebels. And they're 7.5. Vegas set them at 7.5. And, of course, in their minds, they should be in the Sugar Bowl every year, even though we don't crown the SEC champion there. You know, they're the people's champs in their own minds. But you look at the schedule, and again, much like last year, the non-conference is not very challenging. So they should win all 4 of those games. But what's interesting about that, okay, Mercer's a dub. Then you got to go to Tulane, right? And last year, people thought, hey, Tulane may give Ole Miss a game to Ole Miss's credit. It was, really wasn't much of a game. But you got to go down to Yeoman Stadium. That could be a little dicey. Georgia Tech, of course, the final year of Jeff Collins era. They bring in a new staff. This will be a nice test for Georgia Tech, which you think Ole Miss should be able to win that game. Then, so you're 3-0, but let's say you get upset against Tulane. I think that really puts them in a tailspin. I do. Because then you get Alabama. Then you host LSU in Arkansas. Arkansas is a toss-up game. I think LSU wins at Ole Miss. I fully expect that to happen. But let's say you're 2-1, and then you go 2-1 the next group. You're 4-2 at the break. Outside of that Louisiana Monroe game, you look at it, you begin to think, okay, what games should we absolutely win? Well, Vanderbilt. Everything else is a toss-up. You got to go to Auburn. You don't think Hugh Freeze will pull out every stop he's got at Auburn? You host A&M. You go to Georgia, and you go to Starkville. Ole Miss probably a 7-5 team this year. Went 8-4 last year. I think they take a step back. I do, and that includes winning Tulane. I think this is a schedule that's not very good for them. And again, I like Jackson Dart. I know a lot of people are talking about him like he's just nothing, but the kid really showed that he's an athlete last year. What's that defense going to look like? That's the real question. And you only had 2 wide receivers last year, and now they're both gone. All right, let's take a look at South Carolina. South Carolina lost a lot of pieces last year, but they bring Spencer Rattler back. So it should be a chance for them to be pretty decent. I'm glad we get them early. I think Shane Beamer and those guys will be jacked and ready to play us, and the Gladney family will be there. They'll be rooting for South Carolina. That's okay. We love them anyway. We do. But, South Carolina, I think, again, a team that was probably been ahead of schedule, right? I mean, Shane, a lot of people question the hire. And Shane Beamer has answered his critics in spades. He's like, hey, guys, I got it. I can handle it. Ended up in a Gator Bowl last year. It was incredible. They got beat by Notre Dame, but it was a game. All right, looking at their schedule this year, over and under for South Carolina, 6.5. They play North Carolina and Charlotte. That'll be interesting. Then they get the Paladins of Furman. Then they go to Georgia. They could be 1-2 when we go to Columbia. They'll beat Furman. The UNC game is a toss-up. They will lose at Georgia. And again, we talk about some of these toss-up games and the fact that we get people off what should be a very physical game. We're going to play South Carolina after our road trip to Georgia. I like it. I like it a lot. And then they're going to be traveling to Tennessee. So we're kind of sandwiched in there pretty good between 2 road trips that South Carolina won't be favored in. Then they get a week off. Then it's Florida, at Missouri, at A&M, Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and then Clemson. Again, the over-under is 6.5. I like where it's positioned, but I think South Carolina's probably a 7-5 team. And that's, you need to beat North Carolina. If you lose to North Carolina, and then, think about this. You lose to UNC, you beat Furman, you lose at Athens, Mississippi State comes in and wins, and you lose to Tennessee. 1-4, heading to the bye, won't be good. Again, the rest of the schedule is somewhat of a toss-up, and I think Clemson will be ready to go this year. when they go to Williams-Brice. But what a surprise that was last year. Beamer and those boys had them playing well down the stretch. But this could be a year where maybe South Carolina comes back to earth a little bit. But again, I look at them and I think that they're a bowl team again. Should be. All right, Tennessee. We're expecting them to take a bit of a step back, but how much of a step back? Are they good enough to beat Georgia? I don't think so. But you look at the schedule and the fact that the over-under is 9.5. You think, you know what? That's doable. Could they be right back in a New Year's Six game? Absolutely, they could. They get Virginia and Nashville at the Nissan Stadium. That'll be big. And that's like one of those 11 a.m. kicks, too, so you better watch that. But I think Tennessee wins that game. And we'll get a little closer. We'll start picking them in their proper context. But then Austin Peay comes in. You go to the Swamp. I like Tennessee's chances. Then it's UTSA. Then it's South Carolina. There is a really good chance that Tennessee is 5-0 and probably ranked in the top 10 with a bullet heading into the bye week. I mean, could you argue that Florida should beat Tennessee? I know it's in the Swamp. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere because at that point, Florida fans will still be believing. But it's not in any way inconceivable to think they won't be 5-0 going to the break. You host A&M. You're at Alabama, at Kentucky, UConn, Missouri, Georgia, Vanderbilt. You look at this thing and you say, okay, if I had to pick it today, I would pick Georgia and Alabama to win. Well, that makes them 10-2. And has them over 9.5. And there's always a swing game in there. Maybe that's a Texas A&M game. Maybe it's maybe it's a game against South Carolina. But I think that game's a neat one. I like Tennessee's chances to put together a really good year, provided they stay healthy. All right, one of the teams there's so many varying opinions on is Texas A&M. Now Vegas has them as 7.5. I think that's easy money on the under. They were not good last year, and you say, well, Bobby Petrino's back. In the conference, is that going to make that big a difference? Is he going to get them to 8 wins? 5-7 last year. You beat LSU at the end of the year, and everybody rushed the field to celebrate a losing season. Jimbo's under a lot of pressure, and if they start having some adversity earlier, he and Petrino will probably start wrestling over control of the offense. But early on, things should go okay for them. You got the Lobos in week 1, then you got to go to Miami. You remember how offensive that game was last year? It was so terrible. Like the football was just so bad in that game. But Miami goes 5-7 last year. But now you got to go to their place. 2 teams last year that both missed a bowl game, and you're going to be playing at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. That'll be interesting. A&M's got to win that game. Then it's the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks, and then the Auburn Tigers. It's not unrealistic to think, hey, we could be and maybe should be 4-0. Then you get Arkansas on a neutral field. Again, I'm not bullish on Arkansas. And let's say they get that one. They're 5-0. You're thinking, wow. Well, then it's Alabama and Tennessee back-to-back. I got both of those as losses. You got a bye week, to kind of recover from back-to-back losses to what should be top 10 teams. You host South Carolina, you go to Vaught-Hemingway, and then you host Mississippi State, Abilene Christian, then LSU. So you start doing the numbers here, and you think, you know what, because the non-conference schedule is so favorable, if they can beat Miami, I think 8 wins is probably not only doable, but probably probable. Because if that's the case, if they beat Miami, they'll sweep the non-conference, and then you throw in the fact, too, that you're hosting Auburn, you're hosting Mississippi State. You're hosting South Carolina. So a lot of these toss-up games will define the season are going to be played in your backyard. I don't think A&M's going to be great. I do think they're going to be better. I think most of you probably agree. All right, the final team in the conference, in more ways than one, Vanderbilt. Vegas has them as over and under 3.5. So they win 3, you lose. They win 4, you win. That half always tends to get you. Last year they went and beat Hawaii out at their place. I picked Hawaii to win that game like an idiot. It ended up being a difference in the standings too on Gene's page. But anyway, so they host Hawaii, and then they get Alabama A&M, and then they're at Wake Forest. Then they're at UNLV. How good has it been to be a Vanderbilt Commodore here the last couple of years where you've gone to Hawaii and now you're going to Vegas? Yeah. You got to have something. But it is not in any way inconceivable to look at this and say, you know what, Vanderbilt could be 4-0. How about that? Think about that. But that was kind of the case last year, if you remember. They got off to that great start, and everybody's like, oh, they'll be bowl eligible. And I was like, did you look at the schedule? Wake Forest is 8-5 last year, and that's going to be played in Winston-Salem. So let's say 3-1 for Vandy, probably best case scenario. Could they beat UNLV? Yeah, I guess it's possible. How probable is it? I don't know. We'll see. This is a Vanderbilt team that got much better down the stretch. So I think, going on the road and playing a 5-7 team, even if it's in their own backyard, I think you feel like you're in good shape there. So again, let's give them benefit of the doubt. Let's hit it 3-1. You host Kentucky, you host Missouri. I think that basically determines bowl eligibility. You drop both of those games, you're not going to make a bowl game. You win at least one of those games, you're in the hunt. You win them both, you're going to be bowl eligible. No question about it. Because after that, you get Florida and Georgia, 2 losses. Then you're off. Then you go for the annual rivalry game at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. Probably one of the biggest complaints that I've seen is that they did not protect all the traditional rivalries. Moving forward, we want to do this and we're going to rotate the schedule. But Ole Miss, and while they won't admit it publicly, they're fuming to not be able to play Vanderbilt every year. I'm surprised they didn't go petition to call it a rivalry. We'll even buy a trophy. We'll put like a statue together of a guy in some seersucker shorts. But that's a tough game. It always has been. At least Vanderbilt defensively will play well. I just don't think they can score at Ole Miss. Then it's Auburn in Nashville, at South Carolina, at Tennessee. So my question is, once you get through Kentucky, Missouri, where is there a sure win? There's not. There's not. There's a bunch of toss-up games, and you got to think maybe they can find a way to get one. You got to sweep the non-conference if you can. Just don't know if that's possible. I think, again, 3-1, and then, again, Kentucky, Missouri, you've got to get them both, and then hope you can pick somebody off. And I think Clark Lee's doing a good job there. I just think they're so talent deficient there. It's just going to be almost impossible. So that's my take on the Vegas over-unders. I don't know what you think. But I think, again, you look at this in its totality. Vegas is not in the business of making, quote, predictions for the SEC standings. They're giving you betting options. And if you'll notice, so many of these are kind of middle of the road. And again, that's where they throw in that half game to kind of trip you up a little bit. But there's a lot of parity. And you start running the list here. There 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the SEC that are projected to win 6.5 or less. A lot of parity within the league. And then 2 of the teams that are 7.5 are Ole Miss and A&M. We play them both. So, again, the schedule is favorable, but I think the reason it's favorable is because State plays so many games at home, and there is a great amount of parity within the league this year. But that's my feeling on it. Maybe you feel differently. That's okay. But nevertheless, that's how it shakes out today. All right, time for today's Top 10 list. As always, brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair. B-L-A-I-R. Close with Blair. Blair is a mortgage professional. Blair is a guy that knows how to get things done. If you have mortgage needs, and many of you do, maybe you're looking to buy a new home. Maybe you're in foreclosure. I don't know. Either way, help is on the way. Reach out to Blair at 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. And be sure to let him know your needs. Confidentiality guaranteed. Also, a great guy doing a great job. That's what you need. You need a winner. Top 1% close ratio in the country, back-to-back-to-back years. 22 years of experience. Fairway Mortgage, that's the place where he works. Very reputable lending institution. You're not dealing with some prime lender that's going to be gone here today and gone tomorrow. Great service, great experience from a great guy that's a Bulldog fan. I like to keep business in the family whenever I can. So reach out to Blair at closewithblair.com. Okay, today's Top 10 list suggested by Melanie Moody. She is a Top 10 contributor regularly. And I don't always thank her on the show the way that I should. So, Melanie, thanks for your interest in the list and all of your wonderful suggestions. We have used several of hers. There are other ones I haven't. But she's... All right, guys, I'm talking directly to you. Directly to you. So listen up. HIMS helps guys like you with all your health and wellness needs. You're having issues getting the job done in the bedroom? Well, you're not alone. But HIMS has you covered. HIMS has a lot of personalized options to treat ED like Viagra, Cialis, and hard mints, wintergreen chewable tablets, compounded with doctor-trusted ingredients. New, discreet, and only available through HIMS. At 4hims.com/care, that's 4hims.com/care, you can access licensed medical providers and trusted treatments for ED 100% online. How cool is that? If prescribed, HIMS will ship to you for free in discreet packaging. It's that simple. If you're having a hard time, having a good time, look no further for a doctor-trusted solution. Just go to 4hims.com/care. No copay, no awkward in-person appointments, no video visits, no insurance required. ED is a personal issue. And so HIMS is treating it as such. Go to 4hims.com/care to get started today. That's 4hims.com/care. It's only available if prescribed. Subscription is required. See the website for full details and important safety information. Some restrictions apply. Hard mints is a chewable compounded drug, and the FDA does not approve compounded drugs, nor does it verify the safety of their effectiveness. Again, visit hims.com/care, 4hims.com/care to get started today. Says, you know, Steve, with the heat wave coming up, let's do a top 10 list about heat or being hot. I've shared with you guys before, if I ever leave Starkville, which I doubt I ever will, but if I do, it will not be for any other reason other than these Mississippi summers. I know many of you enjoy getting out on the river. The older I get, the more this heat bothers me. It does. I guess I'm getting old and decrepit because I am from the 1900s. And it's one of those deals, man, where the hotter it gets, the man just saps your energy. You get out there and work in the yard a little bit, and it's like, I need a nap. It didn't bother me as much as it does these days. I guess turning 50 does that to you. And which reminds me, my birthday's coming up here in a few days. My friends call me Cash. So when you write the check, there you go. Or I can present you with the Cash App. That's it. Top 10 songs about heat. And kind of got an eclectic group here. I didn't include Buster Poindexter's annoying Hot, Hot, Hot song because it is annoying. Also didn't include It's Like a Heat Wave from Martha James and the Vandells, and that's probably maybe an oversight on my behalf, but that's a legendary song. I wanted to give her an honorable mention. You know, Pat Benatar actually re-recorded that song and had a big hit with it as well. Did a good job on it, but it's not as good as the original. You know, I'm a big covers guy, but Linda, good job, but the Vandells did it better. All right, so here are the top 10 songs about heat, according to me. Number 10, I love this song. I do, and it is an underappreciated classic in the Bryan Adams catalog. I like it a lot. I like that gravelly, raspy voice of Bryan Adams. I do. Like I could write in that vein. I could write a song and say, "Here, Bryan, this was written for you." Love Bryan Adams. I do. But it's the heat of the night. In the heat of the night, man, I love that song. I think you guys, it's no connection to the TV show, but this is a great one. And again, a lot of people go back to the Reckless album because that was kind of the breakthrough for Bryan Adams. A lot of great songs in the catalog after Reckless. This is one of them. Number 9, could argue this should be higher on the list. It's not, because there's some other songs out here I think kind of fit. But it's Hot in Here from Nelly. I'm a Nelly fan too. And I think some of the most creative writing in Nelly's career came on this track, especially the part when he says, I got a pole in the basement. Oh, I'm just kidding like Jason, unless you're going to do it. Deadgum right. Shout out to Nelly for that. So Hot in Here from Nelly, number 9. Number 8, not necessarily about temperature per se, but if we're going to do a song about heat, I think you got a list about heat. You got to work in Donna Summer's Hot Stuff. Great, great song. She was the queen of the skating rink, man. When I was a kid, like it seemed like Donna Summer was everywhere. you know, this Last Dance and all that kind of stuff. We could probably do a top 10 list of Donna Summer classics. But hot stuff, looking for some hot stuff, baby, this evening. Absolutely, Donna. We are too. Number 8 on your list, Donna Summer's Hot Stuff. Number 7, I love this band. I had several of their 45s. Again, I'm from the 1900s. Many of you kids don't know what a 45 is. You think it's just a gun. It's not. But you know, nowadays you have vinyl. You know, we used to have vinyl singles. It had an A-side and a B-side. I had a bunch of Kool and the Gang 45s. Eventually, got enough money to buy a real album. But Kool and the Gang, It's Too Hot. Great song. Be sure and check that out. Kool and the Gang's outstanding too. And here's the thing too. So Kool and the Gang is not the singer. A lot of people misconstrue that. At their heyday, James J.T. Taylor was the singer. But the Kool and the Gang is bass player Robert Kool Bell, who is an incredible musician and wrote most of the songs for Kool and the Gang. So there you go. A little bit of trivia that maybe you didn't know. Number 6, former members of the Eagles here, Glenn Frey, The Heat Is On. They play that at Duty Noble, and many of you hear that song and you think, who sings that? It's Glenn Frey from the Eagles. God rest his soul. Number 5, Roy will be excited about this one because Roy, I think Roy's even suggested we do a top 10. I don't know if they have 10 hits, but it's the band Asia. They were kind of a rock synth fusion type band and had a big hit with a track called The Heat of the Moment. Not necessarily about temperature, but it fits our motif today, Asia. You know, it's like sometimes I think that my taste in the 80s music was very eclectic. And then Roy and I will talk, and I'm like, you know, Roy and I had much different experiences. You know, I'm listening to the Sea Hags and Vane and Tora Tora and Shotgun Messiah and people like that, because you know when you preps got involved, like in the beginning, like when Def Leppard's Pyromania was out, it was only the cool kids like myself that were into Def Leppard. Then all of a sudden, you know, MTV starts playing Pour Some Sugar on Me and all that stuff, and it's like all of a sudden you guys get involved. So all of us that were hanging out in the smoking section and chasing girls that drank beer, we had to migrate a little bit. You know, we couldn't be wearing our Def Leppard shirts there because all of you guys were. And you in your tight-rolled, acid-wash jeans and your Dexters with no socks, we couldn't be seen as affiliating with you. So we were kind of rock snobs. So when metal hit the mainstream, we had to kind of dig deeper. We did. And Roy, I don't know what Roy's motivation was, but Roy was listening to some bands that, oh, this band was great and had a million hits, and they didn't. I love Roy to death, but this is one of those. Roy is a big Asia fan. Number 4, man, a big hit here. You may remember him, you old guys and ladies. You're not old. The ladies aren't old, the guys are. Ladies are beautiful for life. But band called Sweeney Todd had a lead singer by the name of Nick Gilder. He had a big #1 hit in Canada and the U.S., a song called Hot Child in the City. Maybe you've heard it before. It's got a nice groove to it. Great, great track. What's interesting is I read an interview with Nick, too. A lot of people are like, hey, this is an upbeat, you know, it's just a song about, you know, you're a teenage guy or whatever, and there's a hot girl or whatever. That's what it's about. Nick said kind of a dark twist to this. He said when he was out in Hollywood, California, he saw these underage, you know, prostitutes that were out there. And that was kind of the genesis of the song, not necessarily as in any way to support that. But it was really, there's kind of a sad connotation with the song. And maybe I've just ruined the song for you, but it is a great track. But again, it kind of begins with that. You know, like the infancy and genesis of this song was the fact that he saw young ladies being exploited out in Hollywood and California. And so ultimately that led to Hot Child in the City. Interesting. Number 3, speaking of people that are going to hell, no, I'm kidding. It's a great track, Hotter Than Hell, from Kiss. And I remember being a kid, and everybody said you can't listen to Kiss because Kiss stands for Knights in Satan's Service. And of course that wasn't true, but that's what they told us because we had so many people back in those days that wanted us to behave. You can't do that. You can't go fishing on Sundays. You'll catch a devil. You know, you can't listen to Kiss because the devil's in the music, right? There was so much there. We're going to play it backwards. And we're going to, you know, suggest that it says something that it doesn't. But Hotter Than Hell, that's the title track of the same album from Kiss. And it's about an attractive lady, just so you know. It's not literally about hell. Tipper Gore. All right, number 2, a super group, Robert Palmer. Many of you know Robert Palmer. Again, God rest his soul. We lost Robert a couple years ago. But before Robert Palmer was a huge solo artist, he obviously worked in some other bands. Had a great career. We've done a top 10 list of Robert Palmer's career. But when he joined up with Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, and they put the Power Station together, it was amazing. It was. And the biggest hit they had of an original song was Some Like It Hot and Some Sweat When the Heat Is On. And the percussion on this album is phenomenal. They also did a cover of T-Rex's Bang a Gong, Get It On. The mix on this is incredible. Production value on this album from start to finish is amazing. And there's a great song on there that doesn't get a lot of press. It's called Communication Breakdown. Another one. It's amazing. But again, I'm a big Duran Duran guy, and I thought this was a cooler version of Robert Palmer. I like this version better than I Didn't Mean to Turn You On. I know you guys like him up there in that 3-piece suit like a crooner on a cruise ship or something, but I think the best work for me is the Power Station album with Robert Palmer. Number 1, though, if we're going to do a song about being hot, we got to go this direction here, man. A great, and yet you want to call them an American band. They're not. They're a mix of Europeans and Americans, which is one of the reasons they came up with the name Foreigner. Because Nick Jones said, no matter where we go, somebody's in a foreign land. No matter where they tour. That thus became Foreigner. And the great track, Hot Blooded, and I saw that Metal Show episode when Mick was on there, and they had Marty Friedman, formerly of Megadeth, who's carved out a big niche for himself over in Japan. And he talked about, Mick, what were you thinking with that solo in Hot Blooded? Because it doesn't match the normal rules of composition, but it works. It's phenomenal. And Marty asked him, I don't know what drugs you were on, but can you tell me? Because the solo is so unique. I love Foreigner. You should too. And one of the first top 10 lists we ever did was Foreigner. And the thing that I can count on with Foreigner is even the B-sides, even the deeper tracks when you put an album on, are outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. So I encourage you, go out and grab some Foreigner today. Number 1, Hot Blooded from Foreigner. And again, thanks to Melanie Moody. She has sent us another couple of suggestions. Heath Hopkins has sent us a couple. We probably are about 20, 25 deep. However, that doesn't mean that we're doing them chronologically. Some of them we never do. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of times I can't do a list justice. I don't want to disrespect the fans, because if you're like me, it's like when somebody puts a list out of songs of my favorite band, I always think to myself, this guy's an idiot. I know what they're talking about. They're just putting the hits out here and calling it a day. And so I want to make sure we can be genuine in what we do, so I don't always do them. And that's out of respect for you and out of respect for the artist. If I can't do it justice, I'm not going to do the list. And sometimes I'll even turn to you and say, okay, give me your top 10, and then I'll listen to the songs, and I may reposition some. But so maybe you get an opportunity to kind of speak your mind on the show, in a manner of speaking. I want to thank Roy, as always, for always putting these great lists on Spotify for us. You can follow Roy on social media at Dogmatic67, DAWGMATIC67, and follow him on Spotify, too, and have these lists just kind of auto-populate to your phone. How cool is that? I mean, it didn't cost him anything to do it, but, man, it takes a little time, and this guy's been so religious and meticulous. And it's so funny, like, if Roy gets busy and, like, is a little late doing it, he's like, oh, man, I'm so sorry. I'm not paying him. I mean, the benefits package is outstanding, right? But the reality of it is that Roy does all this for all of you. I never had any plans to put these on Spotify, but Roy did. He goes, I'm happy to do it for you. And then next thing you know, Roy and I become friends. And so you're never too old to make new friends. And Roy is a good friend to me. Love Elsa, love Missy, the whole clan there. And wish them the best, for sure. And appreciate their contributions to the Boneyard. Lo these many years. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart. I love Campus Bookmart. You should too. Neatly positioned on the backside of campus. You can swing in there and get your game day shopping done, then take a ride on the campus. Next thing you know, you're one of Mississippi State's historic venues. How cool is that? Best selection of Mississippi State merchandise in the known universe. Be sure and go check them out next time you're in town. If you can't, go by to see their smiling faces. You can visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net, courtesy of Al Gore's Internet. While you're there, you can pick out something for yourself, for your significant other, your children, your nieces, your nephews, your grandparents, whoever, mom, dad. But always treat yourself with a little something. If you got to go make a big order, get yourself a keychain, something. You're working hard for a reason. Don't forget to reward yourself. And maybe Father's Day was disappointing. And maybe you don't want to tell anybody. Maybe you had your eyes on that Mississippi State polo at Campus Bookmart and nobody came through. Don't you have to tell anybody. Just go order it yourself. And we're going to give you a little incentive to do that. Use promo code BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. And that'll get you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than 75 bones, absolutely incomplete. Thanks as always to Campus Bookmart. All right. We have picked up a new commitment. And, we're going to talk some recruiting on this show from time to time. As we get into the heart of recruiting, we're going to talk about it a lot more. But I don't want it to be a show where, we've been so red hot on the recruiting trail, we could almost overdo it, right? I mean, it's like every time I turn around, Zach Arnett's out there tweeting out to Jeff where he's, all excited because we've got a new commitment. We picked up one over the weekend that I was not expecting. I like surprises of that magnitude, right? I don't like surprises of the negative variety. I don't. And I think we all live that way, right? If you want to surprise me, give me good news. I don't want any bad news. I know that's part of life, but I don't want them. So Jimothy Lewis, former MRA product, transferred to IMG Academy, and we felt like we were in a good position with him before he went out there, and then I think people kind of gave up hope. Will Friend was at Auburn at the time, continued to recruit him, and as he got to Mississippi State, made him feel like a priority, and now Jimothy Lewis is coming home, now committed to Mississippi State. He was projected by many to go to Ole Miss. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This is not a situation where Paul Jones and I just kind of laid in wait to make our Ole Miss peers look silly. That wasn't part of the plan at all. We weren't expecting this kid to commit. Now, he came to camp, and we're like, well, that's interesting. That's Jimothy Lewis. What's he doing here? Surely he's just taking a tour, right? The next thing you know, we hear he's going to be back on campus. You think, nah, really? And then he commits. One of the biggest surprises, I would say, in my career in covering recruiting. I've been writing about Mississippi State since 1997. I've been covering college football recruiting now for 20 years. This is one of the biggest pleasant surprises I've ever seen from Mississippi State. And yes, I understand today is not signing day. And I wish people would stop tweeting that. Well, I'm just going to wait. Well, then don't even tweet that. How about you wait and tweet? Or they jump on the message board as well, oh, this is great, but it don't mean nothing to signing day. Yeah, no duh. We don't know that? Why are we so against fun? Can we not be excited? Can we not get, be pumped up because our coaching staff is out there killing it on the recruiting trail right now? Yes, we know nothing's final. That's well established. We don't need that to be reminded of that. We don't. Well, I'm just going to wait and get excited. Okay, well, fine. Keep it to yourself. Because I get tired of seeing it, man. I do. You tweet out, hey, Mississippi State's red hot on the recruiting trail. Well, I'll have you know, it doesn't mean anything till they sign. Oh, breaking news, Sherlock. And you get in the Facebook groups, it's like some of the people, and I'm going to talk about this for a minute, and then we're going to talk about Jimothy. Facebook brings out the worst in so many people. And there's some people, I think, you shouldn't be on social media. And it's not because you're doing things improper. You're showing too much of yourself. You're showing that you're really not a happy person. It's like we want to be the wet blanket every time something good happens. Well, it's like I had somebody yesterday message me because I said something about LSU. Well, we can't really say anything about LSU because we didn't even make Hoover. Well, yes, we can. So we're precluded from having an opinion about college baseball because we're not playing in Omaha? Is that how that works? Because based on the things that I see many of you people post on Facebook and you comment on, you've got absolutely no reason to talk about it then, by that standard. So let's try to be a little more positive. And if you're going to be negative, keep it to yourself. What did your mom tell you as a kid? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I'm not some Pollyanna out here, but when we have a situation like this, we have a 4-star offensive tackle that we were not expecting to get, and he picks Mississippi State, and the first thing you think of is to go try to throw a wet blanket on the enthusiasm. That is not a Mississippi State problem. That is a you problem. And I'll take it to your face in front of your mom. We don't need that element in the fan base. We don't. So again, Mississippi State mamas, please encourage your daughters to marry positive Mississippi State fans. End of rant. All right, let's talk Jimothy Lewis here. 6'6", 275 pounds. And if you've seen this young man in person, he is what you would want an offensive tackle prospect to look like. You know, a lot of guys have some bad weight on them, right? So they come out of high school, and a lot of times in high school, it's like we're trying to gain weight, trying to gain mass, and sometimes it hurts our level of athleticism. And then you get into a college weight room, we got to take all this bad weight off and then start stacking some good weight on. Jimothy Lewis is ahead of the curve in that respect. He doesn't have a lot of bad weight on him. He's a guy, too, that already knows where the weight room is, already knows how to work, and so he should be able to play fairly early in his career. Over 25 offers. Let's run through the offer sheet here. And again, it hadn't been updated in a while, but Alabama, Alcorn State, Arkansas State, Auburn, Baylor, Florida, Florida A&M, Florida State, Georgia, Grambling State, Indiana, Louisville, LSU, Memphis, Miami, Michigan, Michigan State, Missouri, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, Tennessee State, Southern Florida, and Vanderbilt. At one point, he was listed as the #1 offensive tackle prospect in the country for this class. He's not now, but he's still top 20 at his position. Of course, those early rankings come out, and of course, they're the most inexact because of the fact that as more guys emerge and more evaluations are done, there's only one place to go is down. But this is a guy that most of the SEC wanted to come play. And so, of course, he was the cream of the crop last week when a lot of people thought he was going to commit to Ole Miss, and now that he's committed to Mississippi State, it's like, oh, he's really not that good. Yeah. Tell yourself whatever you need to feel better, Ole Miss fans, because you've had to do that a lot here as of late. And it's so interesting, too. They keep throwing this Tavares Banks thing up in our face. I've never talked to that kid, ever. And he did commit to Mississippi State at camp and wanted to hold the announcement. And the next thing you know, Ole Miss gets involved, and they get him. And congratulations for getting him. He's a good player. But why all the theatrics? Oh, we want to have the big show, and we want to let the kid commit to Ole Miss to kind of endear him to our fan base at Mississippi State's expense. They're like, oh, well, you guys know what was going on. Yeah, that's right. You want to stack that up with what's happened over the course of last week when your people didn't know what Snock of Burnside was going to do. You didn't know what J.J. Harrell was going to do. In fact, your people thought he was going to Ole Miss, right? You want to stack that up? And then do you want to throw Jimothy Lewis on top of that? You want to have a battle of sources? Is that what you want? You're going to lose, especially when the only win you have is something that was contrived and planned and worked as some conspiracy. Why can't you just go recruit kids? Why can't the recruiting class just kind of stand on its own merit? And listen, State and Ole Miss should both have really good classes this year because there's a lot of really good players in the state of Mississippi. Period. And it's true that Ole Miss has committed itself more to high school recruiting. And we talked about that for a couple of years now, that we didn't think it was sustainable to allocate, the bulk of your class, or at least about half of your class, to transfers. I think Lane Kiffin has realized that. And if that's not the case, then why are they prioritizing high school recruiting now? Because that was the spin of the moment last year. Oh, well, we're just going to go in the portal. We're going to get all these ready-made players. Okay, well, if it worked, why are we doing this? Why are we out chasing all the high school guys now? And why do you guys keep the turnstile spinning in the transfer portal with all these guys going out, including some guys that transferred in last year that have now transferred out this year? Interesting. But Jimothy, a big-time player for sure. And when you look at this offensive line class that Mississippi State is putting together, I think about our offensive line right now, and I begin to ask myself, listen, we got some guys that play really hard. We got some guys that give us so much of themselves to move this thing forward. They do. And you know what? I think that's outstanding. That said, we needed to get some bigger offensive linemen. We needed to get some more talented guys. No disrespect intended to anybody else, but we had kind of, we went out and wanted to get the Space Invaders deal where we had the big, massive offensive lineman with, incredible wingspan. We were going to pass it all the time. And then we ended up having to have a couple of starters that, are a little bit on the shorter side for our league. And you go look at these numbers here. TJ Lockhart, 6'6", 365. He probably needs to drop 30, 40 pounds. And he will. Kyson Shepard, 6'5", 315. Luke Work, 6'6", 285. And it's a rather svelte 285. On top of that, you throw in Jimothy Lewis at 6'6", 275. So athletic guys with a ton of mass, a ton of room to grow, and you begin to think about, getting downhill, having an offensive line that can move the line of scrimmage. That's what you're getting after. Will Friend doing a great job. He's not alone, but here as of late, Will Friend, we have seen things really pick up. As good as Bumpus is doing, Will Friend is doing equally as well. And again, and Timothy Lewis is a prime example of that. 2 weeks ago, we didn't expect him to be a Bulldog. We didn't even expect him to take a visit here. We were surprised he shows up at camp. And that's the thing about recruiting. I remember Melvin Smith told me this years ago. The better part of recruiting is convincing players that they should be here when initially they don't want to be here. Because in the beginning they're thinking, I want to go to Alabama, I want to go to LSU, I want to go to USC, or I want to go to Miami. In the beginning, that's what all these kids think. And then all of a sudden, you get involved in recruiting and you build some relationships and you think, okay, hey, what's best for you and your family? Be a little bit closer to home. And so that's what we've seen in this situation here. Jimothy's a guy that was an established prospect in our state for this class. We already knew he was coming. We knew that he would be an SEC guy. They go to IMG. He explodes out there from a recruiting standpoint, and then ultimately now is committed to Mississippi State. So quick rundown on the class, 14 current commitments, 7 of those from the state of Mississippi. And they count Jimothy as a Floridian when he is a Mississippi product. So technically 8 of the 14 product of the Mississippi high school system, right? And then in addition to that, 3 from the state of Alabama, 2 from Tennessee, and then 1 over from the state of Louisiana. And again, the class is really coming together. You got your 1 quarterback. I think it'll be a 2 quarterback class. You got, we got Gayton listed as a running back. I think he'll be a safety. You still want to go take 1. I think it's a 1 running back class. And I know they're going to stay on Conan Daniels until it's just inconceivable, that he's not going to come. They haven't given up on him. Receiver, you got 3. Could see something happen with Nareel White, currently committed to Arkansas. That's something to kind of monitor as we move forward. And you got your 4 offensive linemen. You'd like to get Markel Bell, down at Holmes Community College. He is a full qualifier to high school, so he has the ability to come out this year. He could sign right now and enroll in summer school and be part of your football team this fall. A lot of people are encouraging him to go back and play another year. And they think, hey, if you've already got, State and Ole Miss and that level of SEC offer, what a big year. Maybe you can get Alabama or Tennessee or something. That's what he's being told. But he has the opportunity to come out. If he comes out now, I think it changes the numbers. But, again, I think it's probably 5 high school guys and an older guy. We probably got to get the portal for 1 guy. But we'll see. Defensive line, it's a great year in state. We've got 1 defensive lineman right now who I would contend may be the best defensive lineman in the state. I'm probably in the minority, and that's completely okay with that. I think we'll look back in 3 years and say, you know what? Rosebell was right. Terrence Hibbler is a dude. That guy's going to do a great job for state. We got 1 linebacker in the class. I'd like to take a couple more. So we'll see how things kind of progress there. But, again, the class is coming together nicely. We do expect another commitment by week's end. And some of your Bulldog commitments are out there kind of teasing that there's another one that's going to commit on Saturday. And so I also know, too, that there is at least 2 prospects that are committed to other SEC programs that are in talks at Mississippi State potentially about making a flip. And there's hints on a couple more. So I know there's a couple of guys committed to Ole Miss that if Mississippi State gave them the go-ahead, they would come and go. And then, of course, I think Arkansas is having to sweat some things out over there. So, again, that's your latest update on the recruiting trail. And, again, things trending well when you begin to think about team rankings. State and Ole Miss both in the top 20. And Ole Miss sneaks ahead with a 3-star. They said they were not going to do that anymore, but they did. So Ole Miss 17 in the country, State 18. I mean, we're talking percentage points. And they have 1 more commitment. So that's the difference between the 2. It's not necessarily the quantity because, they have 1 more commitment. So we'll pick up another commitment and State will leapfrog them again. That's how it's going to be much of the year, right? I mean, that's just how it's going to be. State and Ole Miss both kind of jockeying back and forth. And again, I submit to you, State and Ole Miss both are going to have really good classes this year. Do we both stay in the top 20? Probably not. But at the end of the day, most years Ole Miss declares victory on signing day, and then State ends up having the better run of things. But again, I'm just excited about what's happening with Zach Arnett, what they're doing in state. He committed to do a good job on in-state recruiting, and they have been. It's been outstanding. All right, let's take a few minutes and talk a little bit about baseball. And if you hadn't done so, go to dogpilethebook.com, and you can get most of my sports books there. Dogpile is there. Alpha Dogs is there. Limited quantities available there. If you don't have it, you need to order soon, because Starkville one's completely exhausted the inventory there. And then Flim Flam, of course, I guess we got about 600 or less copies of that still available. And, of course, we did multiple printings of that book, and so you can still get them. And then Bloomsville Leander, of course, will soon be out of print. You can get that through Amazon. I would encourage you to get to them unless you're getting it through your local bookstore. But here's the deal. I want to talk about baseball. This is what made me think about Dogpile. So LSU and Florida are going to play tonight for a national championship. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also kind of sad because we're not there and we weren't a factor in things this year. And you look at what happened yesterday with LSU and Florida, the game got lopsided, and give Jay Johnson some credit. He's like, hey, it doesn't matter if I get beat 100-5. It only counts as one loss, which is correct. And look at what's happened to Christian Little, man. Christian Little was the Game 2 starter in the 2021 National Championship Series against Mississippi State. Ultimately leaves Vanderbilt, transfers to LSU, and everybody was like, oh, what a great coup. And I was like, no, it's not. And now he's been relegated to being a mop-up guy for LSU. Yeah, I mean, you hate that for a young man's career, but again, he was so young kind of coming in, and sometimes I wish I could just kind of sit down and talk to this guy. I mean, I'm just fascinated to see what's, his story. Everybody's like, oh, he's the best young guy, and what's happened? It's just one of those things that kind of boggles the mind a little bit, that somebody with that kind of promise could just in 2 short years go from starting a game where Vanderbilt was competing to win the national championship. If he could be the winning pitcher in a national championship game to clinch a national title, and he's not even there anymore, and not only is he not starting at LSU, he's not relied upon at LSU. It's crazy. It really is. I hate it. I hate it for the kid. Will do. All that said, LSU and Florida will get together for all the marbles, and we saw LSU take batting practice last night. So what will Paul Skeens do, right? Well, there's a national championship on the line. He's taking the ball. And then Jay Johnson's like, well, we'll have to see. There's no way. There's no way Paul Skeens doesn't pitch today. Is he the starter? I don't know. Do you save him for the back end? I don't know. I don't know how I would do it, to be quite honest with you. I've thought about that a lot today. You begin to think, hey, if I've got a lead after 6, can Skeens get me 9? I suspect so. The problem is if I start him and he runs out of gas and then we don't have anything behind him, it's a loss. And it's a gamble either way. If you don't start him and you get down and the separation happens early in the ball game, and let's say you're down 3 or 4 runs, and then you bring Skeens in and he shuts everybody down, but then you don't score and you lose, and you say, well, you wasted him. If you start him and you run out of juice, it's a difficult decision. I tell you what I would do. And I guess maybe I've made up my mind right here talking to you guys. I would just start him and let him go as long as he can without hurting himself, right? I mean, the guy's thrown, 250 pitches in 8 days? That's ridiculous. It's crazy. And yes, I get it. Back in the old days, is what it used to be. But the reality of it is, this is a guy with a bright future ahead of him. But it's a national championship on the line. So I'm going to let Skeens make his own decisions, obviously under the direction of our medical staff, and see how it goes. But I do like Florida to win the game. And I said early on, I picked Florida to win this whole thing. And I'm not just in love with my pick. I think Florida should have won Game 1. I think Florida should already be at home planning a parade. But they didn't. They didn't. And I think it's interesting, too. We talk about, Wake Forest. The Wake Forest thing, again, a lot of these offenses don't translate well to Omaha. And that's the case for Wake Forest. And if I remember correctly, they closed out the Omaha experience with 18 consecutive scoreless innings. You can't win if you don't score. But Florida, people are like, oh, Florida had an easier path. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you got there as long as you get there, I don't think Florida actually had an easier path. I mean, Oral Roberts was proved to be a very, very difficult out. But I'm excited about this. And so now what are we doing to take steps to get back into this mix? I mean, we have two of our SEC contemporaries playing for an national championship, and we've been home for over a month, right? I mean, that's just – I'm not going to sit here and belabor the point, but it sucks, man. It does. So I shared this because I think it's important to understand. Justin Parker, obviously, is here. Had a chance to get some intel that he actually spoke with Scott Foxhall before taking the job, and that Scott was very complimentary about Mississippi State. And, of course, listen, like everybody else, we have some fans that take things a little bit too far, right? But we have the greatest baseball fans in the country. And, listen, I know that LSU's going to go up there and they're going to set an attendance record this week at Omaha, and it's going to be great, and it's good for the game of college baseball. But our people turn out and they're part of the game. And they don't just show up in the regionals. You know, we'll have people that'll show up and do a great job for us every weekend no matter who we're playing. And that was one thing that was kind of illustrated to Justin Parker, is how great the fan support is here. I mean, you see it, but to hear it from the inside is another thing. So a lot of people say, you know, hey, who is Justin chasing in the portal? Well, I'll tell you, things are a lot more tight-lipped these days, and for good reason. Now, I'm not out there beating the bricks, you know, maybe like some of you think I should, because I'm not going to go do something that is a detriment to the program, especially over something as sensitive as portal recruiting. You say, well, here's the deal, too. People are like, I don't understand, you know, some schools are doing this and saying that, shouldn't be scared of this. You know, listen, Jay Johnson's gotten up there after every ball game and, you know, basically encouraging kids to transfer to LSU. And that's part of the process now. Is it tacky? Absolutely. Has it been effective? You better believe it. You better believe it. And you don't think, hey, if all of a sudden some of our Major League Baseball players is like, hey, we're going to throw in enough money and we're going to put together $1 million slush fund, and we didn't go out there and put together an incredible roster and we wouldn't win a national championship, would you think any less of that? Absolutely you wouldn't. You wouldn't. And so give LSU credit for taking advantage of the situation, putting together a great team. And they are a great team. They're a win away from a national championship. And no matter how this thing shakes out, how can you say that LSU's formula wasn't successful? The question is it sustainable? I don't believe that it is. I don't think it is. And I think it's one of those things, too, that you know, there was a possibility, obviously, that LSU didn't even make Omaha. They did, and they're playing in the final game. Had they not made it, I think you could make an argument, you know what, this was too much money to invest. We didn't get enough return on the investment. The LSU people now are thinking, you know what, hey, win or lose, this is the way to go. So they're going to be ramped up on their NIL efforts. So, hey, you know what, one more kid, we'd have won this thing, right? And if you win, you're like, you know what, hey, this is proof positive here. This is what happens. You know, there's a part of me, too, I look at it and I say, you know, when you get up there and say, basically you're saying, hey, everybody transfer here because I can't recruit and develop players. I need you guys to come in here and be paid to play so we can go win. I think that's an aspect of this that people don't really consider. But at the end of the day, it's like the Honorable Al Davis said, just win, baby. You think anybody cares? You know, all of us sitting on the outside are like, oh, that's a bad way to do things. That national championship count, you don't think that there are other LSU national championships that maybe have an asterisk next to them? Well, they do. But you know what? They're still champions. A championship is a championship. And listen, I get it. Like when the Florida Marlins and all that stuff happens, and it's like, you know, come on. I guess maybe I'm old school. It's like, you know, you build your team through the farm system, you know, right? And maybe you make a trade or two down the stretch, but you don't go out and buy the World Series. And that's kind of how this thing looks at LSU. But I've had time to think about it. But you know, at the end of the day, if the shoe was on the other foot, we would be just as excited, if not more so. Because I told you guys for years, LSU is ready to get back to being LSU in baseball. They had won since 2009. And like, oh, they won these national championships. Guys, it's been almost 15 years. Think about this for a second. Most of the kids that LSU is recruiting these days weren't alive the last time LSU won a national championship in baseball. It's crazy you think about it in that light, isn't it? It really is. It's nuts. But they have taken the steps necessary to kind of move this thing forward. And so a lot of people are like, well, Steve, why isn't there more information out there about this portal recruiting stuff? Well, what if we put something out there and then all of a sudden LSU or somebody gets involved, or Tennessee, and says, hey, we'd love for you to come play here. What's your NIL package at Mississippi State? Oh, well, it's this. Well, we can give you $25,000 more. And so I kind of get it, right? Like, what what value is there in us putting a name out there and saying, hey, I'm hearing that Mississippi State's about to get this kid committed, and then somebody else swoops in with a more lucrative NIL package or puts us in basically a bidding war where we have to allocate more NIL resources to get these guys or these deals. You understand what I'm saying? And so I don't want to be in a position where we're making it harder for our coaches. And yes, I have an obligation as a journalist to tell you guys the truth, but at the same time, too, I'm not going to go out there and do things to the detriment of Mississippi State baseball. It's not going to do it. I think in many ways that's the right way to do things. And you know what? They'll commit to us, they'll enroll, and we'll write a story, and we'll all move forward with life. Does it really matter if you know a week ahead of time? You know, because this college baseball recruiting coverage thing is much different. You know, I think, again, when we fully fund it and we're able to give people full scholarships, it's a different deal. But until we get this NIL stuff kind of cleaned up a little bit, you know, I think you're going to see people be a lot more tight-lipped. And there's some programs out there, I mean, I'm reading left and right that they're recruiting this guy, and this guy's got an offer. And I don't know if that's the way to do it. I don't know if transparency in recruiting in baseball works the same way it does in football and basketball. And that's not something that's just germane in Mississippi State. I mean, think about this. How many times do you see a young guy that's being recruited in baseball tweet out an offer? Honestly, I mean, think about it for a second. You see him tweet out the commitment, but you don't see him tweet out the offer, because how many times do you see it in football and basketball? Well, it's almost every time. And now a football guy gets an offer. I mean, that's the first thing they do is, you know, we screenshot a picture of, Will Rogers and tweet out a picture. I got an offer from Mississippi State. You know, a lot of that because it attracts more attention. In college baseball, a lot of people don't want attention. And I know that there are some colleges around the country, some coaches that say, hey, don't even tell people you have an offer from us. And it's not because they're ashamed, but because it is such a complicated process. You don't want to advertise the fact and shine a light on these guys like, hey, this kid's fixing to go to Mississippi State. Oh, well, let's go take a look. If State wants him, we should get him too. And so we have a finite number of resources when it comes to NIL. So why do we don't even make life harder on ourselves or for Charlie Winfield or Chris Simonis. It's important to understand that. It's really important to understand that. So as long as we can announce the commitment and get to know these guys before they enroll, great. And you know, there were some things last year. I mean, we were doing baseball bones, and I was digging up stuff and talking to scouts and talking to friends that were covering baseball in the Cape and getting information from guys that are connected to players. And it's like, oh, there's this guy and that guy. And then that also builds up a thing, too, where people are like, oh, well, if we're talking to them and we don't get them, it must be because they chose somebody else. More times than not, it's a situation where we didn't offer, but we can't always quantify that. And so I'm just trying to be careful with how we do things. I'm not trying to defend anybody. I'm not trying to prop anybody up. But we never want to be an impediment to our coaches out there trying to do a job on a recruiting trail, ever, in any sport. But it's just a little more complicated in baseball. And I'm sensitive to that. I'm a lot closer to it. And so I understand it. So that is in no way mentioned in arrogance or haughtiness. It's just the kind of the reality of the situation. You know, at the end of the day, it's not about what you know. It's about what kind of team we put on the field. And so, listen, that's how we're approaching it. Maybe that's the wrong way, but it's the way that I can live with it. All right, reminder, too, we will be transitioning very, very soon into full-time football stuff. But we will cover the baseball scrimmages this fall like we normally do. But you're going to see unprecedented coverage of Mississippi State football this year. We're going to really ramp things up. I encourage you, as always, come by and join us. Take advantage of the 50% off special that ends at the end of the month. And, again, that runs for a year, so take advantage of that. And you're probably spending more money on coffee anyway on your way to work each day. Jump aboard the genespage.com website and interact with our great, not just our experts. We have some incredible posters that are very well connected that really make our community go. And there's a lot of people out there that have, they claim sources. We actually have posters that have legitimate sources, right? So we're the best thing going. And I say that without any hesitation. I remember years ago when we would break the scoop on a story, and then like somebody in the print media would go run it in a newspaper, and then everybody would have these people on their shows, and they're like, hey, well, the Bug Tussle Press wrote this story, and they got it from us, and we were so mistreated and overlooked. And now everybody in the print media has a blog or has social media accounts and instant updates, and so they used to despise us, and now they've become us. And the problem with that is that we're better in being us than they could ever be. And so we work exceptionally hard, and I don't mean that I'm not taking a shot at anybody as an individual, just industry-wide, that's what I'm saying. the newspaper industry look down on people like ourselves, and then they have become us. And that's important to understand. So don't tweet anybody. There's a couple of smart alecks out there. That's what they want to do. They always want to create beef. I have no beef with anybody on the Mississippi State beat or anybody connected with Mississippi State media. There's not very many people out there that I don't have a good relationship with around the Southeastern Conference, and of course there are some obvious ones, and I don't really care, right? So be that as it may, we're going to move forward. Reminder too, if you need Stark Villains gear, and chances are you do, that is the cool thing. I'm just going to, even though I came up with it, I think it's great. Stark Villain, wear the black shirt, wear the black hat, and it's a nice little play on words for Starkville and Starkvillian. But rep the brand. I appreciate it when you guys do. Again, at starkvillains.com. You get t-shirts, hoodies. And again, if you've got a kid going to Starkville High School or any Starkville school, you can get black and gold. A Starkvillain t-shirt or hoodie in black and gold. If your kids go to SA, you can get blue and orange. It's a wide assortment of colors and styles at starkvillains.com. Be sure and go check it out today. That's going to do it, man. We'll be back with you guys on Wednesday. We'll have another great top 10 list, and we'll have hope. You never know. With Zach Arnett, I can't count anything out. I mean, he may flip somebody and just say, "Here you guys go." Here's another one. But we do expect something later in the week. We'll kind of keep you up to date on that. And again, we expect to have some baseball transfer portal commitments sooner rather than later. But again, just be patient with the staff. They're working. Had visitors on campus this past week, and there is one player in particular that we are confident that is already committed, but we're going to allow him to go public, right? It's his moment, and we're going to let him take ownership of his own decision, and then we'll report after the fact. We're happy to do that. That's just kind of the bottom line. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.